I guess we can watch this one, 7 minutes. Pretty good.
Why are there so many games made in the Unity game engine? Let's get right to the point because there is no beating around the bush with this. There are a lot of shoddy, janky, horribly thought out games made.
As Unreal also became more popular, yeah, I can see a lot of like new beginner indie games are not releasing, but also there is like game devs and stuff like that where it's like the more popular the engine is, the more garbage there is gonna be, so yeah.
In the Unity game engine. Welcome to the channel, guys. I'm Brandon and we talk about everything game dev here. So there are a lot of opinions about game engines out there, and each individual developer is going to have their own unique perspective on the tools that they use to do their job. But you can't deny that the industry as a whole seems to have certain feelings about the Unity game engine. What's even more interesting is there are quite a few people who think that by leaving the Unity splash screen on your game, you're actually harming your game because people are going to make automatic assumptions about your game before.
I mean, the alternative is to pay $2,000 a year for having Unity Pro or Plus or whatever. Splash screen is fine, I guess.
They've even managed to try it. So at least for some people, there seems to be a stigma attached to this game engine. And on this channel, we talk about every aspect of game development. So I wanted to give my own unique perspective on this as someone who's been using Unity for, I don't know, 7 years now. And I have no plans on changing game engines. But just a moment ago, I meant...
This aged poorly. Wait, when was this made? Oh, 5 months ago, okay.
That yes, there are a lot of clumsily put together games made in the Unity game engine. And it seems reasonable to ask that shouldn't I, someone who is making games on a daily basis, shouldn't I be using the best tools available for the job? Why am I sticking with the one that seems to have this kind of crappy reputation associated with it? And I know I'm probably triggering some Unity fanboys right now, so let me just go ahead and put you at ease, because from my perspective, I am using the best tool for the job that I can. There is a very good reason why so many crappy games have been made with Unity. Take a look at this graph. Unity in its very earliest conception was released in 2005 at the Apple Worldwide Developers Conference. Unity 2.0 was launched in 2007. And I didn't use it back then, but based on the description, it sounds like that is kind of around the time that it became a real game engine, at least by today's standards, because that's the version where they introduced things like real-time dynamic shadows and directional lights and spotlights, which I suppose I take these things for granted, but it's hard for me to imagine a game engine without things like shadows and lights. But it was back in 2009 when Unity discontinued what they then called Unity Indie, and they renamed it to just Unity, where you could develop video games that you could sell commercially, and it was available for free. They introduced their Mechanim animation system.
Oh yeah, I would like to see the history of how Unity's payment system progressed, because I remember it being like $100 one time I think you had to pay, and he's saying that it was free like 10-15 years ago. I'm interested to see kind of their progression. Like Unreal, I think, did the opposite. Before you had to pay for it, and now it's completely free.
Unity 4.0, and that was in 2012, and that made it a whole lot easier to animate characters. And by 2015, they'd released Unity 5, and that's actually the version of Unity that I was introduced to, and by that point, it was a fully featured, really robust game engine. The key takeaway here is that Unity is a robust game engine that handles things like rendering, lighting, materials, shaders, animations, and so many things that you need in order to be able to make a video game, and it handles these things out of the box, and it's free, and they were the first game engine to be made free for commercial use. Their core mission was to make making video games free and as easy as possible for as many people as possible. But that is the issue right there, and I'm not even saying that this is a bad thing. It's just the reality.
I can't believe it. I don't know if this was luck or Tom Sweeney did like some 200 IQ move, but using Fortnite, first making a really good video game, and then using Fortnite to basically test and kind of use all the newest features that Unreal has to offer, so they kind of battle test it, and they get a bunch of money from Fortnite and kind of actively develop it, is like a crazy move, because they get a bunch of funding from that, and also they have like a real practical game that has to be tested, released, that millions of people play it. They basically have just a great system where they get a bunch of funding for Fortnite. Fortnite helps them test new features and release them. And I think Unity would kind of get a lot of value of that. If they kind of created some really good game and use that to kind of promote their engine and get funding from that, instead of doing this, there is no person ever that's gonna like a free engine that starts paying you for stuff. People kind of, people kind of get used to like not paying for stuff, or just like not paying for stuff becomes the norm, and then when they kind of start to ask some money back, it can feel really bad. When game engines, while the game engines that start like with some payment system and then they become free, they get huge boost in popularity. Yeah, just like making people pay more and more, the users are gonna just lose trust in Unity, and I don't know, it's gonna get crazy. So they should kind of try to find some revenue in like similar way that Unreal does, where they basically create some really good game and then use it to test new features or even create new features. Because if they create a game and they see through the process, okay, it was really hard to work on this and this part, and this is not efficient, and this is not performant. Okay, we need these features to implement in the next version of Unity or something like that. That would be real nice of Unity to do. Instead of this, like, just adding on to stuff to get some, like, fees, shave off percents, pay people, use, like, game engine as a service, stuff like that. Like, people are just gonna lose trust and go away, basically.
For people to create things, then the more things are going to get created by people that have less experience. By the way, really quick, if you're enjoying the video, then go ahead and give that like button a boop. I'd really appreciate it.
Already done, buddy.
A suite of tools like this that are completely robust and by a lot of standards easy to learn and easy to use. And I'm not saying that game development is easy to learn, not by any stretch, but Unity made it a whole lot easier than it used to be. If you make that suite of tools available for free, then you get exponential growth curves like this. Now Unity has real competition. Unreal became free. Godot has since emerged as a competitor to Unity, and while it seems to have a smaller following, their users are fiercely loyal to that engine. So thanks to...
Yeah, basically, I think what he's gonna say is basically the more users, the more garbage, but it would kind of go like if the trajectory is something like this of an engine, like popularity is not that big, maybe a new version features come out and it becomes really popular. What's gonna happen is, in this stage, probably just some people use it, and there is probably like 40-50% of good games, and there is like 40-50% of garbage games. But then as the popularity grows, the curve goes something like this. Like now this is like the garbage section of the games, and then you have some good games. And it's kind of still bigger than this, but you get like 80% of garbage and then 20% of good games.
Unity's decision to become free. Now there are all these other great free tools out there that are competing for market share, and because of that they're trying to constantly one-up each other. Unreal recently released their Nanite system, which allows for a higher triangle and object count than has ever been possible before. Unity is working towards drastically higher performance with their Entity Component system, which blew my mind when they first showcased the technology playing this mega city scene at 60 frames per second on a smartphone. These engines keep bringing newer, better, easier to use technology to the table, and we as the developers, we get to benefit from that. The fact that so many shitty games have been made with Unity is really just a testament to the fact that they were able to create a game engine that was easy enough for amateurs to pick up and start making games with. Now, whether or not you like that, that's a personal decision, and this
Oh, I guess, yeah, I didn't mention that, but yeah, ease of use. Usually when popularity grows, that's because ease of use has been drastically increased. So if Unity becomes free, that's ease of use, like it's more accessible right away. If they give it like, or they create like more user-friendly interface or something, that's ease of use. That's also when that increases also, yeah, there's just going to be more people trying it out, and most of them are going to be, amateur beginners just testing it out.
Discussion is only going to get more heated with the introduction of artificial intelligence, because making games just became a whole lot easier for people, and that trend only seems to be continuing. The number of Steam games that get released, it's only going to continue to skyrocket in the coming years. So yes, a lot of amateur developers, myself included when I first discovered Unity 5, we come out of nowhere and we start making crappy games at first. And because Unity is relatively easy to pick up and start playing around with, you code in C#, which is a very readable but also very powerful programming language. When you compare it to, say, C++, which is notoriously difficult to learn, it is packed with convenience features. If there's basically anything that you want to do, there's probably a tool to help you do it. And probably most importantly, the sheer number of learning resources available for Unity online make it the easiest engine to learn by far. Chances are, if you're trying to figure out how to do something...
I wouldn't agree with this. I think Unity gets a... Or not Unity, I think Unreal gets a bad rap just because how complex it looks on the surface. But if you actually just sit down and take like a beginner's course where you go and like use a simple template and you change a few things, you will realize it's pretty simple. Especially like if you're coming already from a coding background, yeah, sure, Unity is better. But if you're not, you're just like person that wants to make games. I think going into Unity, I think people just get intimidated by a bunch of features and the interface, and you get a bunch of stuff and tools, and Unity kind of gives you less of that right up front. So I think the perception is off. I think if you like put 2 people, give them like 5 hours in each engine, they're gonna learn probably similar amounts of things. Even maybe they might even learn like a bit more, or will be able to do a bit more in Unreal in like 5 hours, just because you have blueprints, so you don't have to actually learn C# and learn stuff in there. You can just basically click stuff around and do stuff.
Thing in Unity and you're having a problem, you can go online and someone else has already had that problem and they have posted a solution for you. Whether it's
now, honestly, for 80% of problems, I now don't even go to Google. I just go to ChatGPT. You have now this new feature. It's not that new, but in ChatGPT they added like instructions. So you can basically write some basic stuff about you or your background or what you want ChatGPT to kind of know upfront before you even start writing prompts. And in there, I just basically put, okay, I'm whatever, Unreal Engine developer, I know this and this, I work like this and this in the engine. And then when I ask it question, it gets me more personalized questions. So I don't have to type every time. In blueprints, I am using Unreal Engine, I'm using only blueprints. How can I make this and this working like this and this? I can just ask the question directly, or if I'm asking for the issue, I can just ask directly and get information there. So right now, honestly, Googling stuff for like bug fixing is not even that crazy. Sometimes if something is like kind of general, or I don't know how to explain it or something like that, then ChatGPT might not be able to understand what I even mean. So then I would have to go to Google. Or if it's a newer problem, if I'm using like 5.3 version of Unreal and I'm asking something specific there, like there is no way that ChatGPT is going to even know anything.
Thread or a YouTube video or whatever. And this is the perfect use case for amateurs or wannabes or whatever to come along and teach themselves how to make games and then publish those games on Steam. But just because a game was made in Unity does not mean that it's going to be a bad game. Plenty of amazing games have been made in Unity. It is not an engine that needs to prove itself. A good craftsman doesn't blame his tools when he makes a mistake, or whatever the heck the phrase is. Blame the craftsman, not the tools. If someone comes along and releases a piece of crap game,
that is sometimes true. You can also blame the tool, depends on the tool, you know.
Using the Unity engine, that's not Unity's fault. It's the developer's fault for putting together a crappy game. Now, it is Unity's fault for making it possible for amateurs to come along and make crappy games in the first place. I just don't see that as a bad thing. Just because something's made in Unity doesn't mean anything by itself. The same could be said that just because something is made in the Unreal Engine doesn't mean that it's going to have AAA graphics right out of the box. The artist that's putting that game together has to know how to make it look beautiful. Let me know what you think down in the comments below, but let's try to do it without starting an engine war. My wife and I are making a game in 90 days, but we are also releasing 2 videos a week on this channel, so you can imagine we are very, very busy people. And if you want to help support us and keep content like this coming out, then consider supporting us on Patreon, like all of these awesome people. I want to give a very special thank you to our Hall of Fame patrons, Jakob Yondok, Zonder Kessler, Darren Perrine, Throbbing Wind, Fontaine Waite, and Couch, as well as our early access patrons, Zyoma and Ken Wade. If you choose to support us on Patreon, you can get early access to all our videos, monthly alpha builds, and more.
This also might be true. So Unity has bad marketing, letting good games remove the Unity logo splash screen and forcing the bad games to use it makes everyone associate the engine with the bad games. This might also be true, like every time you see like, yeah, splash screen, you might like start to associate, but I think it's still like 90% of the time it's the game. Like if behind the splash screen is actually a good game, like it won't like ruin your experience, I don't think. Okay, cool.